You know, as my grandfather used to say, why would you buy the cow if you're getting the milk for free, right? That's the tension he's living in, because now she's going to cut the sex off before they get married. And he's like, wait, I've already been getting it free. Now you're going to, I see, this is just setting us up. Hey guys, Pastor Mark here. Pastor Mark Reacts. Hope you're having an awesome day. Make sure that you comment in the comments below and tell me the kind of videos you want me to react to. I'd love to hear those. I'd love to react to those. Today, we are talking about marriage advice from television shows. Here we go.
Listen, Chandler.
No, why?
Because I just keep thinking about all these things that I'm not gonna have, and it's freaking me out. I don't know what to do about it.
Okay, don't sweat it. Chandler is nowhere around, so go ahead, get it out of your system. That guy's cute.
Phoebe, come on, I'm serious. Just gotta talk to him about all this.
No, that is the last thing you want to do.
Why?
Because you're marrying him.
You gotta help me out here, Phoebes.
All right, I've never been engaged, and I've never really been married. But I can only tell you what my mother told me. Whenever you have doubts or fears or anxieties about a relationship, do not communicate them to your husband.
So, I'm not supposed to share my doubts and fears with the guy I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with?
That is correct.
Obviously, there's some satire going on where they're trying to call out almost a bad version of communication that happens in marriages, and the idea of burying something, not talking to your spouse about it, is obviously advice that comes back to haunt people. I've done a lot of marriage counseling in the last 20 years, and you sometimes can trick yourself into thinking that not telling your spouse a thing is actually what's going to make it's going to be a good in the end. Save them from hurt, save them from pain. Of you know, counsel a lot of people who maybe there's some secret, there's a secret sin in their life, or there's been cheating in the past or whatever, and they think, this is going to be better for my spouse if they don't know. Now, inevitably what happens is they do find out in some way. It could be a decision you're making in life just generally, or you know, whatever, and they do find out, it does blow up, and it's worse because even the couples that I've met with where there have been, say, cheating or whatever, it's the person says what actually hurt was the lying for the many, many years. That's the thing that's actually bugging me almost more than the act itself, is the fact that you were able to live in a way that was a lie. Meaning Phoebe's advice of burying it, not talking about it. If you have something you don't like about your spouse, don't tell them, because, you know, just live in it. And the problem with that is you start to resent that person because they're not being the person you want them to be. So generally bad advice. When I do marriage counseling, there's the thing that we do around communication. And one of the great things about communication is this keyword assertiveness. And what happens in life is if we're not assertive, if we don't say, here's how I feel about a thing, or here's what I think about a thing, or here's where I think we should go, then you start to resent people for things they don't know you want to do. People cannot read each other's minds. They don't know you feel a particular way one way or the other. And so you have to be assertive. You actually have to tell them, here's how I feel, here's what I need to get off my chest, here's where I think we need to go, whatever. Of course, it's terrible advice to go, just bury that, don't tell them, you know, don't talk about it.
All right, well, that's very sweet of you. Okay, I'll call you later. All right, bye. Hey.
Kramer, can I get the...
I had a very interesting lunch with George Costanza today.
Really?
We were talking about our lives, and we both kind of realized we're kids. We're not men.
So then you asked yourselves, isn't there something more to life?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, well, let me clue you in on something.
There's not.
There isn't.
There isn't.
Absolutely not. I mean, what are you thinking about, Jerry? Marriage? Family?
Well,
They're prisons! Man-made prisons. You're doing time! You get up in the morning, she's there. You go to sleep at night, she's there. It's like you gotta ask permission to use the bathroom.
is it all right if I use the bathroom? Really?
Yeah, and you can forget about watching TV while you're eating.
I can?
Oh, yeah! You know why? Because it's dinner time. And you know what you do at dinner?
What? You talk about your day.
How was your day today? Did you have a good day today or a bad day today? Well, what kind of day was it?
Well, I don't know. How about you? How was your day?
Boy, it's sad, Jerry. It's a sad state of affairs.
I'm glad we had this talk.
Oh, you have no idea.
Yes, arguably what I would say to be the greatest show of all time. Yeah, so the advice here is kind of a myth, a narrative that gets played out in our culture, which is the autonomous life, the life where you're single, you get to sleep around, you get to just have a bunch of different kind of relationships, is the great life. It's the good life. It's good capitalism, right? It's just you, yourself, your own decisions, your own autonomous democratic ideas. And when you tie yourself to another person, it's prison, because now you've got to adapt to their life and you've got to have these conversations. Like, it's a prison, run from it. And of course, that's kind of a narrative that's out there. When you're single, you're free, you're happy, you flourish. It's all about you. You can do what you want. You get married, you got to do what they want. You got to basically, die to yourself and make them flourish. And so it's the end of your life. And of course, from a biblical standpoint, there's actual truth to that in some sense, where you are marrying another person, you're becoming one flesh with them. And there's pieces of you that actually have to die, just like with parenting. When you parent, if you want that kid to flourish in their life, there's pieces of you that have to die. You can't just wake up and do the same thing you did when you were 20 and just get up and walk out the shower and go to do whatever you want for 8 hours a day and come home. It's like getting a dog. I got a dog now. It's like we're at a friend's house. I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta feed the dog. It's a prison. Well, it's a prison in a sense that it's sometimes more limiting, but that doesn't necessarily mean prison all the time. Limiting is oftentimes for our good. And so to just say something's limiting, or just say you have to adapt exactly what you want to do every single moment of every single day. There was a study done by two writers, and they wrote about, it was a secular standpoint of sex, and they was talking about the quality and quantity of sex that's had in our culture. And they were talking about how the myth is that the best sex and the most sex is had if you're single and you're ready to mingle and you're just out there kind of doing your thing and living life or whatever. And what they talked about is actually, statistically speaking, you have more sex and better sex when you're in the context of a normal, healthy marriage. And that people who are in those marriages actually reported more sex and better quality sex. Because oftentimes the question is not just about quantity of sex. Do you have sex 3 times a week, twice a week, 8 times a week, 1 time a week, 1 time a month? What is the amount? And then there's the question of, is it any good? And so there's been studies done with vast audiences talking about this. And even the secular reports that were done, one report was by 2 women, I think Waite and Gallagher was their last names, and they talked about this. Even from a secular standpoint, married sex is better sex, and it's more often sex. So that's a myth that's just blown up. Hey, you're gonna go out, you're gonna live. No, in fact, sometimes that prison, as Kramer talked about, it actually ends up leading to your sexual flourishing. There's 100 beautiful things to marriage that would counter Kramer's entire point that it's a prison, you don't get to do what you want anymore, you do whatever. Actually, studies, of course, the Bible presents marriage as a beautiful picture of the gospel of Jesus and his church, so on. And that's not to take away from singleness. Of course, there's beautiful things about singleness, but in the context of this clip, everything that is true about a flourishing, healthy marriage actually counters his point.
Okay, what did you want to tell me?
Well, you see, Pastor Dan, when we were here before and you had asked us about premarital sex, we might have...
We lied, okay? We have had sex zillions of times. I used to try to keep track on a pad, but it got unwieldy, oh God.
Eric!
Well, I'm sorry, Donna, but we are knocking on hell's door, and I ain't going in.
Eric, you're not going to hell. Well, you might be. I don't know you that
Really
well. I just think you're depriving yourselves of that wonderful moment when marriage is cemented.
See, just pause it for a sec.
By
So
giving-
he said, you're not going to hell. And then he stopped. He goes, well, I don't know you that well. And I think that's actually a really insightful theological point. People talk about sexual sin in another category of badness. And I understand that there are biblical passages that keep listing sexual immorality in all of its different ways as sin and things that are wrong. But I think it's really important to point out, people will say, look, this person had premarital sex, or this person functions sexually like this, and ergo they're going to hell. And I thought one writer pointed out a really good point. He said, in the end, if you really understand the gospel, you don't go to hell because you're sexually immoral. You go to hell because you don't trust Jesus. The question of your sexuality and how it functions is a downstream question. It's a question because there's lots of people who are going to hell for lots of different, so there's people who go into whatever Baptist church in Louisiana who are sitting on the elders board who might be going to hell because they don't know Jesus. And so the question when I meet with people and they want to jump to, sexual question of it as if that's the definitive issue of all faith, so I get to sit across the table from someone and they say, you tell me about sexuality because this is going to be the thing that defines whether I become a Christian. I want to start a little more upstream and talk about Jesus. I want to talk about the gospel. I want to talk about who God is before jumping to any particular issue that may or not be sin. Because as I talk about often, God, the beautiful thing about the gospel and the Holy Spirit is they change what you want to do, not just what you do. And so you have to come to know Jesus first before sexuality is even put in the context of where it needs to go, because it starts to actually change what you desire to do. You're not just not doing a thing or doing a thing to go to hell or heaven. It's you get to know God, and then what you actually take joy in actually evolves and changes around the personal work of Jesus. And so he actually makes an interesting point in saying, look, I can't just actually decide whether you're going to hell or heaven based on whether you're doing this sexually. It may be an indicator that you don't know God in the end, but there's other questions to ask that are going to define the question of whether or not you're going to hell or heaven, and that's around the person and work of Jesus. Hey guys, you made it to the end of the video. Good job. I would love you to leave a comment. Tell me what you want me to do these videos on, and if you liked it, like it and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks so much. Thank you.